This is episode 9 of the Be Happy Abroad podcast, and it is special in the sense that I'm about to introduce the first guest speaker on this podcast. We talk about well-being, fulfillment, happiness, and what the role of a satisfying job and career is in this context. This is my guest speaker's specialty. Does that sound exciting? Then you're in for a real treat. Hello and a warm welcome to Be Happy Abroad, how to live a fulfilling and meaningful life as an international. My name is Franziska Luxoy and I'm your host. Each week we explore proven strategies and insights to help you adapt, connect and thrive abroad, no matter where in the world you are. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite platform so you don't miss out. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Welcome to today's episode of the Be Happy Abroad podcast and to our very first guest speaker, Kate Dahl. Kate is a distinguished career consultant who specializes in the practical aspects of job searching, particularly within the Danish market. But her expertise can definitely be applied globally. It spans across CV crafting, LinkedIn optimization, job interview preparation, and effective networking strategies. With a rich background in humanities and a profound personal journey of career reinvention, Kate brings a unique perspective on establishing fulfilling careers and well-being. Additionally, she's a dedicated mother, balancing her professional and personal life, which you will witness in this conversation as well. Join us as Kate shares invaluable insights and tips to help you navigate your career path successfully. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, Franziska. Thank you so much for having me to be on your podcast. It just really humbles me. So thank you for having me be on your podcast. And so a little bit about myself. So being a career consultant, what I do is focus more on the practical aspects of job searching. So I'm not a coach in that way. I do help people with how to reinvent yourself and how to go about career change as well. So also another thing, a little bit about myself is I am a mother. So that's why you hear these baby noises in the background.
Yes.
So he is
our special guest, Marcus.
Exactly. Yeah. Marcus Dahl. Exactly. And so he's 6 months. So he just has these cute little noises as well. So if you hear these baby noises and yes, exactly. So yeah, if you hear that, it's just him. So not only am I a mother and help with the career consulting, but I also help with the practical aspects of CV, LinkedIn, how to contact Danish companies, job interview, networking, etc. But of course, what I do like to talk about as well and bring attention to is well-being, even though I don't focus that as part of like the services that I provide. I think it's a really important topic to discuss about well-being and why that is important with your job search. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about, if I understand correctly, Franziska.
Yes, exactly. So we are, well, as you can hear, Kate is focused on the Danish market, but through her job and through her own experience, she has a lot of experience that can be transferred to like globally. And that's what we are going to focus on today. And you just mentioned well-being, and that is of course the focus of my work also. How can you feel well, be happy, thrive in a new country? And what is the role of a fulfilling job in this context, from your experience, your personal experience, and what you hear from the clients you work with?
So what is the role of a fulfilling job? That's a really, really good question. I think the role of a fulfilling job is something that makes you happy, makes you feel satisfied and content, but also to your again, your well-being and to the core. It's not a fulfilling job should not be where you come home and go from 9 to 5 and then say, I don't want to be here anymore. That is not a fulfilling job. If you have doubts about where you are, and if you're not happy where you are, and you don't feel, I guess, fulfilled in that way about feeling challenged, feeling that you're growing, if you feel like the tasks, I mean, don't get me wrong, people might be happy with just doing like tasks over and over again, and that's fine. Like, if you are content with that, that is your life, of course. But if you feel that that is not what you want to do anymore, then of course ask yourself, is that fulfilling?
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
it's all up to the person, at the end of the day, of what that definition is. But I think it's more about, again, this well-being, or the well-being, or the core of your body that says that this is a good place in your life. And that to me is fulfillment. I mean, what do you think, Francisca?
Yes, I absolutely agree, because I think, I mean, for me, happiness is not a recipe. Like, happiness looks different to each person. Fulfillment looks different to each person. Like, what fulfills me might not fulfill you, and vice versa. So I think it's really, what do you, which role does work play in your life? And there is this research also that shows, like, for some people, work is just a job, it brings in the money. For some people, work is a career, they want to have that upward movement. And for some people, it's about purpose. I believe we both fall into this last category, otherwise it's hard to be an entrepreneur. But yeah, there are different like roles that a job fulfills, that work fulfills. I think Marcus agrees as well.
I think so too. It shouldn't be like a ball and chain, like where you feel like you have to go to work. Actually, and it's funny because right now he's playing with a ball and a chain that I have made for him, and it's like exactly what we're talking about. You shouldn't feel like you should be in a ball and chain, like going to work and feel like you're dragging. You know, you should be the chain should be off, essentially, where you feel like you're free and not like tied to your work. You know, and that you're there because you want to be. You know, that should be what a fulfilling job is, I think. So, yeah.
I think here we are already touching upon a very important and relevant next topic, and that's authenticity. Because you should do what feels right for you. And I think authenticity, I mean, of course, it becomes this big topic that you can talk about for ages in the context of internationals, because it's always this, like, how far can you stay yourself, in how far do you adapt to your host culture, in how far do you adapt your strategies to apply to the host culture and still feel that it's also authentic.
I think when it comes to being authentic and job searching, it's really a fine balance, I think, because the focus needs to be about the skills and the competences, but it also, like, and that's the balance, right, about what is considered to be authentic when it comes to, or being able to show that authenticity. Is that the picture in the CV? Is that showing your hobbies? Is that making content, right? So I think it's really, like, to me, like, authenticity is, for me, more about having the right skills and competences for the job and for the job search. And, like, but it's most important for me, at least, that what needs to be done is more about the job interview. I actually wrote a blog about, like, being, like, showing your personality in a job interview. And I think that is the biggest part of where you can show your authentic self, because you can have that conversation and bring your personality out. And I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of job seekers, because, for example, if you're, applying from one culture and you're going into another, and especially in Denmark, if you're like, well, I've been, like, some clients have told me, well, they didn't choose me because my personality didn't fit. And I find that, like, very, I think it's worded a lot by, like, Danish employers that you shouldn't like say it's about your personality, because of course we as job seekers, we take our international job seekers, we take that so personally, because then you're like, well, what's wrong with my personality?
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong. And I always tell
No.
them, like, there's nothing wrong with your personality. What they like, what especially Danish job employers, what they mean by personality is that they don't have the right soft skills. And I think that's where communication comes into play when it comes to that. And I think being authentic self is more just being like your professional self.
Yeah.
In the end.
I think
And
that part about the soft skills is really interesting, because it's sometimes the part that's harder to have insight on, like with from the self-awareness perspective. And then maybe in some cultures there is not even put that much weight on it, so you wouldn't maybe express it that much, not that explicitly. And in some countries like Denmark, for example, it's necessary to show that side of yourself, because the approach in general is we hire a person and not a human capital kind of, like there is this more holistic view than in some other countries.
exactly. And I think that's where, like, again, where even like you can take globally this, like these ideas of personality tests as well. Like Novo Nordisk, like they use a PLM, if I remember. It's just a different like type of personality, and it's a mix of logic text and logic test and personality, where they also see like how do you handle certain situations, and that is also part of your personality. And that's the one way where you can be your authentic self, is be consistent with your answers, and of course be truthful with that. And there's not like, and a lot of people ask about like, can I prepare for that? And I said, no, not really. The only thing you can compare is practice, like just practice being consistent.
Like in my experience, I answer these types of tests consistently if I don't take too much time. Like, don't overthink. Just go with the first answer that feels right, because then you also answer whatever is true to you. And then there is a red thread, of course, because if I just answer whatever feels right for me at first, then it will probably be the same thing every time, unless I lie to myself. And I also believe that there is no point in trying to figure out these tests, because ultimately it's about finding a good culture fit, not only for the company but also for yourself, so that you find a job that makes you happy in the long run. And I think good culture fit is a big part of it.
Oh, absolutely. And being part of like the team as well, and fitting into that can be very, very important as well, and being part of that fit. Because if it isn't, if it meshing right, then it's just not going to work in the end. And it's also about your career in the long run. Like, imagine if you get employed, right, and like you're not the right fit, and you start working there, then like you're only going to last probably not that long. You're going to be again unhappy. You're going to left feeling unfulfilled, in your work. And I think that's part of fulfillment. Like that's can be part of fulfillment in a way, about like if that's a criteria for you about can you work well with your colleagues, and can you be happy working with them, right? So but everyone's criteria is different, right? So
yeah. But now we talked about, well, taking this personality tests and being at the job interview. But from what I observe, often the bottleneck is already earlier, like where people feel that they don't even get invited to interviews. And before you became a career consultant, you were actually really good at, well, landing jobs in Denmark. How did you crack that code, and what would be a good strategy in a new country, like to figure out how do I do it in this country?
Yes. So what I did in my job search is that I knew that I had to go about reinventing myself, because I come from a humanities background, and knowing that going into European studies and having a master's and then going to Aarhus, I knew that it just like unless I did my PhD, it would be almost impossible. So what I did was I looked into the market and to see, okay, where is there a need? What are my skills and competences, and what makes sense for me to go into? And then when I looked at everything, I said, oh, sales, perfect. And I honestly thought I would be happy doing it, and I think I was, but to some degree it was, I wouldn't say delusional. I just wish I did a little bit more research into it, like finding out like, okay, what industries to go for, like thinking about my career in the long term. I think that's what I would have done today, to be honest, because I mainly went into like the tech startup world. And the problem is that with my experience and why I've had so many positions was that within startups and working in sales, it's a lot more of a volatile industry. Especially where you have very high stress levels, you have to perform high all the time. And I thrived on it to some degree, but every time, like, I should have done a lot more research about the companies and so on, because I've lost jobs due to like company merger. I've had temporary contracts. I didn't think about my career in the long term. And because for me it was all about, can I get a job and just keep it for as long as I can to get fast track permanent residency. And that eventually led to my depression. And it led to so much stress. And I realized that like, this is not where I need to be, and found out, okay, where can I go where my life is fulfilling? And it's funny because I wouldn't be where I am today without those experiences. So yes, they were valuable, but I still take on and think about what I could have done differently. And that would have been to have done a lot more research, and also to think about my own well-being in general. And because in the end, I let the Danish government control. I don't, it's a little bit political to say that I let it control me, but but maybe it's not the right term. Maybe I let it consume me.
Yes.
I let it consume me to the point where I was so unhappy, and I just realized that, okay, if that is the price for my happiness, then I want nothing to do with it, and I don't care anymore. And that's one of the real decisions of why I started Career Denmark, is I said that I just want to be happy, and I want to have meaning in my life, and I wanted to have like be more fulfilled. And then I decided to become an entrepreneur in the end. Not everyone has that, of course, but even if it's not entrepreneurship, it could be a job as well. And that's why I say to anyone like worldwide, that if it's like, if you have like, if there's government policies or visas or any criteria that is like, or it doesn't even have to be that, it could just be simply about the stress levels that you have that put you in the position that you're in. Just wonder, like, is it worth it?
Yes.
In the end, So do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. And you said before, do more research. Is that about the market, or ask more questions about yourself? What's important to you? What do you mean with doing more research? Because I think there are many levels to research when it comes to finding a job that actually creates that life that you want to have in a foreign country.
Exactly. No, it is about, like, what I mean is more about not the practical aspects. It's more about, can I be happy and doing this for the long term? Do I see myself doing this in 5-10 years from now? Of course, we can only make the best decisions that we can at the time, but it's very much about like, can I be happy doing this? It's exactly these questions that you're asking, that I would like. It's not just about like looking at the market and what's in demand, which is what I did. And I think that could be good to some extent, but you also have to remember that, especially with economics and economies, that in any country, like at least in Denmark is more dynamic than other ones, for other countries, for example. So, but you can also say, like, there's always going to be like a financial crisis. Something will always happen to where like, or new technologies, etc., where you're how to say, where you're going to be is you're going to change. And it's quite common that like you're going to change jobs, like, or change your careers like 3 times. I've changed my career, I think, at least 3 times, because I was an English teacher before, as well. And then I was also a PhD student, or did my PhD. I also am in down sales, and now I have my own company. So now it's like 3-4 times. Right. Yes. And a lot of people don't understand as well, like, if you make a decision on where you want to go, that it's okay to like change it. Of course, you make your direction and say, this is what I want to be. But I say it at least for 5 years, because it can change, and like life changes and life changes, and it's unexpected, isn't it, baby? Yes, it is. It is.
Good learning early on.
Oh, there we go. That's one. Yeah. So yeah, but
and I think that's so true. Wherever I mean, of course, when you're an international in a different country, you will make changes. But even if you're in your own country nowadays, the development is so fast in many aspects. Now AI is growing, and of course there will be changes. Job roles will change. Some job roles won't exist in a couple of years, and then there will be new job roles. And to have that kind of flexibility and resilience also to adapt, I think, is super important.
Yeah, and that's what I mean as well, because it's also about, can you adapt, but more importantly, can you be happy in doing it? And it's okay to say, yes, this is what I'm happy to do this now, but I don't expect maybe to do the same thing for 20 years. I mean, I love what I do now, but I also have recognized, like, maybe I will change what I want to do in 5-10 years. You don't know that, because life happens, right? Life events happen, and we as people change. So it's more important to say, can I be happy in doing this role now?
So what you do now is like, you call yourself a career consultant, and you distinguish also between consultant and coach. If someone wants your help, what should they already have clarity about? Where on their journey towards applying for their dream jobs should they be?
That's what I do as a consultant, is that I focus on the practical aspects in job searching. I mean, I focus about CV, cover letter for the Danish cultural context, about how you communicate your value to Danish companies. It's a lot more of the practical aspects of essentially intercultural communications, but within the context of, to Danish companies, and how to say in the Danish cultural language, right? But when it comes to a coach and coming to me, you need to be okay with saying, this is where I want to go. Because I do a session about how to reinvent yourself and change your career, but it's only limited to where it's practical, and when it comes to the labor market. But if you are to the point where, for example, you are been in Denmark, for example, let's say 5 years, and you haven't found a job by then, and you are in a negative headspace, and you're not in the right mindset, then I am not the right person to help you. Then you need a coach, like a well-being coach, to help you with getting you out of that mindset. Because I always say this, is that it's 95% mindset and 5% luck and like strategy and everything else, like, combined. And I can also, and that's why I'm saying that, like, before you come to me, get like your emotional well-being in place.
Yes, and I've seen that too, like people who search for jobs, but they're in such a desperate general mood that they cannot show up as their best self. And I recognize that also from myself back a couple of years back. I thought that my only problem or my only challenge was that I needed a job, and I was really desperate to find that job. But it's not a good starting point. It keeps you from showing up as your best self and like and showing which value you can bring to a company. It's back to what you said before. The most important thing is to show what is the value that you bring to the place.
Yeah, and I find, and a good example is like when I've worked with clients, they tell me they want to do sales, marketing, and customer support, just as a general like example. And I'm like, okay, great. Which of the three would you like? And if they're like, well, you know, you can tell that they're desperate because, of course, we find, and I understand that. I understand that, you know, you need to put like food on the table and you need to get money flowing. I understand that completely. But in the especially with employers, and I could say for Denmark, that like they want someone who is passionate, and they want someone who loves what they do. And you're not, and if you are showing and saying I can do all these things, then they think, okay, you don't know what you want. And again, it's about showing your best self. And if when you say I want to do all these things, then it comes off as being desperate.
Yes.
And that's not a good start as well. And that's another thing as well, is that I see a lot is they think, like a lot of internationals will think, okay, well, something must be wrong with me, so I'm going to start a new education. And they think that they're not employable, and they think education in Denmark, or even in, let's say, in another country, and you're having a hard time getting a job wherever, it's a trend that I see where they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to take an education and this is going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And it's not the problem. And then they still end up having a hard time finding a job. So it's either one of two things. It's either, again, about your well-being or your core. Are you in the right place, like mindset space, or is it about like communicating your value in the language cultural context? And it's usually one of those two things.
Yeah. Yes. And the extra education won't fill that gap, because usually it's not about the qualifications you bring. It's mostly about how you communicate these qualifications and how you make that match of, well, reading on the company's website, maybe what are they looking for, what are their values, and how do I match these values?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are like your, I don't know, like your top 3 tips, or let's make it 3, like top 3 tips that you would give people who are looking for a job abroad.
Yeah. So the top 3 tips that I would give is, again, like understand the cultural context of job searching in the country that you're in. That's very important, because how you do things in Denmark are completely different than how you do how you go job searching in Japan. And we forget, because I get a lot of clients as well, or potential clients that are says, I want to come to Europe. And I'm like, great. Where in Europe do you want to go? Because there's all these countries, right? So it's like me asking that question about, like, I want to go to Asia. And that could be India, it could be like, you know, China, that could be Japan, and they're all different cultures. You know, and how you go about it is completely different, in how you communicate that value. So that's one tip, is understand the cultural language and how you communicate your value. The second one is about your well-being, making sure, like, with that well-being. And that's one thing, is like how you could monitor that is finding out, like, where, like, how much negativity do you see in your life, right? Like, is it where one thing I would ask is, do you complain about not finding a job every day? If you're complaining about that every day, and it is like totally, or this negative headspace about what's going on in your personal life or job searching, if that is consuming you on a daily basis, where you cannot say one positive thing about your job search, something is wrong.
Yes.
Do you know where I'm going with that? Because if you cannot put a positive spin to it, saying, okay, I didn't get the job, but this is what I learned, and blah, 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 and like put it like take it as a positive learning experience. If you're not able to do that, maybe think twice about, are you in the right like headspace to be searching for your dream job right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very victimized space and like burdened with a lot of heavy feelings, and that's not helping.
Yeah. And the other tip, this is more of a practical tip, is find out what tools are commonly used in the country that you're living in. So for example, like LinkedIn is very, very popular in Denmark, and you need that to go about your job search because a lot of recruiters use it. Like 2/3 of the Danish population have a LinkedIn profile, which is insane, right? But for example, in Germany, it's not as used as much. And LinkedIn is becoming more popular in Germany now. So since I lived there last, I lived in, and yeah, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I lived in Germany for 6.5 years before I came to Denmark. So I understand some of the cultural context, but don't ask me for like about job searching in Germany, because I was never I never really got a job in as a career in Germany. Not really. I was a student. So but they use Xing. So that is how you go about job searching in Germany. So think about like the relevant tools that you should be using in helping you with your job search, because that is quite important. Because another good example is in Denmark, like Facebook as well is quite popular here, whereas in other countries Facebook is not as popular, and is used quite heavily with like groups and can be a great networking tool to use as well as LinkedIn. But you have to think about what tools are the most relevant in the country you're in to help you with your job search. And I would leave, those are my 3 tips.
Wow, there were a lot of super valuable tips in this conversation, I believe. Thank you so much for being here today, Kate.
Thank you so much for having me, Francisca. And thank you again for being so patient as well, because it has been interesting having a baby on this podcast.
Well, I loved our additional guest, and I'm a mother as well, so I can absolutely relate. And I think it's so cool that you do this, even though being on maternity leave. And just keep your professional side also, which is super important for fulfillment as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode and will be able to implement many of the tips mentioned, as we also talked about the heavy feelings that often accompany the process of settling and finding a career abroad. I want to take this opportunity to introduce my brand new private coaching program, where I support you on your journey to achieve emotional clarity and relief, enhanced coping strategies, and authentic personal growth, so that you can build a life abroad with greater stability, confidence, and long-term success. Are you ready to embark on this journey? Then let's explore how we can work together. Go to behappyabroad.com/exploration for details and book your complimentary connection call.